Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcasts with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more. Coming to Dallas, Texas, September 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2018, the Blockchain and Future Tech Expo. This is going to be a gigantic conference of over 5,000 people. We're going to be talking about blockchain and its applications. We're going to be talking about quantum computing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and several other future technologies that are poised to and actually changing our lives as we speak. Here's why you should attend. As you may know, early adopters are the ones that investigated and profited from things like the gold rush in the 1800s, from the dot-com boom in the 1990s, from the internet boom in 2005, from the smartphone explosion in 2007, from the real estate boom that ended in 2008, and of course, from the Bitcoin boom that started in 2012. Early adopters act now. They don't wait till later. They go out west first, in their covered wagons. They find the biggest gold nuggets. If you consider yourself an early adopter and you want to find the biggest nuggets, then you owe it to yourself to attend this upcoming conference. Blockchain is going to affect how we control and store our medical data, how we send money around the world, how we bank, and more. But artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cybersecurity will play a pivotal role in our lives as well. And that's why our next event, September 14th to the 16th at the Dallas Convention Center, is going to have not only 5,000 plus attendees, but will showcase blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and more. You want to get in on the coming gold rush of future tech and opportunity as an early adopter. Don't be left out. To register, go to bftexpo.com. That's blockchainfuturetechexpo.com. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Future Tech Podcast. I'm Juliette Lamar, and my guest today is Peggy Daley. She is a managing director at the Berkeley Research Group. Welcome, Peggy.
Thanks so much, and thank you for having me here.
Of course. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the Berkeley Research Group. You guys are involved in everything.
That's true. We're everything you want to be and everywhere you want to be.
Good slogan.
Yeah, exactly. It's a large company. We started about 8 years ago, and we're actually, I think we're, if not one of the fastest growing consulting companies in the world right now. We went from just a handful of people 8 years ago, and we've got more than 1,100 folks now, and all over the world. So it's been a very exciting ride to be a part of.
Absolutely. So as a managing director, you really attach to?
Sure. We have a number of different industry verticals and service lines. We're very well known for our healthcare practice as well as our construction practice. But I'm in a more unique area, which is our global investigations and strategic intelligence practice. And that's comprised, it's pretty fun work. It's comprised of a number of different support areas for companies that are involved in investigations, whether it's internal investigations or investigating potential business partners, as well as supporting them in various aspects of litigation. So, for example, we have a very well-regarded cyber team that does first responder work in cyber breaches. I tend to do a lot of work in the technology area. We do data analytics in support of cases, large-scale cases involving, I do a lot of TCPA work. We do a lot of analytics on financial accounting records. And a lot of big data, and then also help run our investigations practice, which is asset searching and background investigations of people and companies around the world.
This sounds very 007.
It pretty much is. I have to say, I went to law school for 3 years, and it was pretty darn expensive, and I practiced for a long time, and my kids are far more impressed with the fact that I'm a private detective, a licensed private detective, than the fact that I'm a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole new world of crime that you can deal with because it's so instantaneous and you can get attacked from multiple different places.
Well, that's right. And it's also very difficult for a number of industries because they're very heavily regulated and probably, for very good reasons, and because they deal with very protected types of information. So, for example, healthcare records, which are protected by HIPAA. We've got higher education clients who have FERPA obligations, and then just about any other company which is hosting third-party data has your highly sensitive personal information, like Social Security numbers and so forth. So when there are investigations, we have to be super sensitive to that, and then they also need to build and protect their networks that host all that data. And so an interesting aspect of what we do is we do a lot of trade secret theft investigations where an employee leaves one company and goes to another, and if they happen to take a lot of information that might relate to their customers, for example, they may have taken all kinds of protected data. They could take. We've had cases where employees have taken healthcare records of customers or government data and government protected data. Right. It gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. And of course, obviously, we have to have very hardened networks for us to even be able to do the work. But yeah, it gets serious pretty quickly, and then they have to figure out if they have to, what kind of breach it is, and whether or not they need to notify customers and consumers. It's very fast-paced work. I mean, a lot of what we do, we get the phone call in the afternoon, and we have to be there, in an hour, and they're in court the next morning. There's a lot of preliminary injunction work. Everything is, we need to be immediate responders because the issues are very important and can significantly impact not only our clients, but, the consumers who are out there, including me, including you. It's our records that are out there.
I know. I was just going to ask you, are you more or less paranoid after taking this job?
Well, I think the answer is both. You're more paranoid. One of the things I worked on years ago was the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, and I worked on that probably about 4 or 5 months after I started investing in real estate REITs, and I went, boy, how dumb am I? How do I not understand how the world works? But once you get into these systems, you realize that there are a lot of companies that do a great job of protecting the data. And one of the things I'm involved in is the Sedona network, which is involved in data I work in the data privacy and data security areas, helping to publish guidelines. And a lot of our clients, most of our clients, do a terrific job on the data security piece. But the problem is, it's so easy to just have one thing go wrong and then have a cascade of problems happen. I mean, if you look at like the Hillary Podesta leak, that was a situation where somebody got a phishing email. Podesta got a phishing email. He did the right thing. He sent it to his IT director and said, "Is this legitimate?" And the IT director sent back an email which he meant to say, "No, it is not," and he said, "Yes, it is." The word "not" wasn't in there, and then what happens from that? And so it's and you have to be ever vigilant. The technology changes. The bad guys are pretty smart, and you have to protect yourself not only from the outsiders, but a substantial number of data breaches and data security problems arise because of the employees that you have, the people that are down the hall. The nomenclature is the malicious insider. So somebody who just decides to take another job and walks across the street to a new employer may put a thumb drive in their laptop and walk away not only with the secret sauce recipe, but Excel spreadsheets with your social security number in it.
And when people change jobs, they're angry. They feel like that's something they should be doing.
Yeah, or they think there's a tremendous amount of rationalization when we interview fraud participants, and an enormous amount of rationalization when you're dealing with trade secret theft. I mean, these are individuals who have worked someplace. They've probably been responsible for building some of the value there, and they feel entitled. And the fact that the records and the data is a corporate is corporately owned, as opposed to something, despite the fact that they may have built it, doesn't belong to them, is really hard for them to wrap their head around. We did work for an investment bank not too long ago, and they had a trade secret problem. Their employee left, and all the right things happened. They got a trigger from the activities on the person's activities prior to them leaving. They were logging into the networks late and trying to get access to things that they weren't entitled to. The person left, and so when we started to do the investigation, we pulled their old laptop and found that they had data from 2 or 3 prior employers that they had brought when they had been employed before. So our client had done everything right, except they had to spend an enormous amount of money to make sure that this individual hadn't exfiltrated that other employer's information onto their networks. And they had to figure out how to disclose and what to do. And it was a big mess. And this was trading data. These are, the brokers and dealer types, so it was all protected information. So it's just very difficult to get it right. And the best clients and the best companies are out there just working every day to do as good a job as they can. But it's expensive, and it's just really, really hard to get right.
I mean, it just sounds like there are so many, like the example you just gave with that gentleman, how he had layers of fraud going on, just
right.
layers of it, and it's just going to keep getting more complicated, and the criminals are going to bury their little secrets deeper and deeper. So, what do you see the future of your industry looking like?
Well, it's an interesting question, because it's one that we talk about internally all the time, because things have changed rapidly in terms of how the data is stored and how it is deployed. A good example is, I was a trial attorney for years and years, and I used to do trade secret cases as a lawyer. And back then, when we wanted to investigate, we weren't looking at thumb drives. I mean, this is the early 90s. We were interviewing the security guards, to see who was walking out with boxes of documents, and we were checking the access codes to see who came in at 3 a.m. And that moved into thumb drives. And now it's moved. Then it was, the theft du jour was emailing things to yourself, which is a really dumb way to try and steal. It's pretty easy to find out. And then it's putting things up onto the cloud. So you're transferring the data there. And then we also do a lot of computer forensics on iPads and laptops and servers and telephones. And if you've read anything in the paper about trying to access the encrypted data on terrorist telephones, and how difficult it is now because there's so many layers of encryption, and the type of information that we used to be able to get as forensic examiners just doesn't exist anymore. Or if it exists, we can't get at it because of the multiple layers of encryption. So it's always a matter of continuing to try and figure out what the new technology is doing. Phone technology, computer technology is changing constantly, and the type of data that's being stored and how it's stored changes. So we have to know all of that, and then we have to figure out what it means when we're pulling that information together. It's very, very difficult to parse and then be able to accurately state with any kind of reasonable certainty that information was taken based on fragmentary evidence. So it's, you have to be very careful. The last thing you want to do is to say that somebody took something when they didn't. That can be very life affecting. It's very difficult to be in litigation, and it's expensive, and you have to get this stuff right. But the technology changes. So, I mean, what do I see in the future? I see us continuing to work really hard to figure it all out and to help our clients get ahead of the curve as much as we can. I mean, you can't stop technological change, nor should you. But if you fall asleep, it gets past you, and you're not going to be able to do your job very well. So it's just a matter of constantly studying what the changes are in the type of technology that we deal with.
I think that with new technologies, if you're not familiar with the one that came prior to it, it's harder to immerse yourself and get adopted into the new way of doing things. So if you miss a couple of steps in between, say you're doing something the old way, jumping from 1 to 5, it's not as possible as people might think.
Oh, that's absolutely right, because not everybody's an early adopter. When we're dealing with corporate technology, and we're dealing with people's telephones and so forth, we're going back sometimes 10, 12 years. Not everybody adopts immediately, especially certain types of companies are incredibly slow. It's because it's expensive, to complete. You're probably. I mean, we've had people that are still on 10 versions ago Windows because their company hasn't updated. So we have to know everything from historically all the way to the new things, and it's always expensive on the first case where we've got some new operating system, and the forensic toolkits that we use don't even apply to it because it's so new, and we then have to do it on the fly and try and figure it out. And there's a lot of research and late nights trying to understand the new technology. But the old stuff is out there, and we continue to work on it. I mean, an interesting thing when I worked on the Madoff case as well. We did a lot of work on that, and the Madoff's firm was still using an AS400 system, which had been shelved 15 years earlier by just about any company. And it turned out they were using the older technology because it suited his fraud. So you never know how old the systems are that you're going to get, and we get that often with a need, like a Department of Justice may come out and subpoena our clients and try and get 15 years worth of, let's say, marketing data. And they may have a lot of that on backup tapes and on old orphan systems. And, we need to be able to understand where it is and how to migrate the data onto platforms that are accessible. And we do a lot of hiring of all those bright young people coming out of college that really understand those platforms.
Yeah, so not only do you have to keep shredding your mail, you also have to fight it. I was hoping you were going to say, no one even bothers with the old technology. It's all the new stuff. Nope, you got to fight it on both fronts.
Right. Well, unless the client is in a situation, and this is one of the things we work with them on a compliance, we do a lot of compliance work and try to help them figure out what they need and how to store that in an efficient way, and what they don't need. They used to call them document destruction policies, and they stopped doing that because it sounded evil. But
a little bit.
Right, but now they call them document retention policies, which just means we're going to keep this and get rid, but it still means we're getting rid of everything else. You don't need to keep everything. And keeping everything is expensive, and it's putting into place systems that are monitored on an ongoing basis that allow you and enable the employees to figure out without too much trouble what they can reasonably get rid of and feel safe getting rid of. Everybody likes to keep everything because it's like a warm security blanket to have that email from your boss from 5 years ago that said you did a great job. But anybody that's ever been deposed will tell you, it would be really great to say, I don't have anything from 5 years ago. If any of you've ever had an email put in front of you from 5 years ago, you don't remember it at all.
Exactly.
Right. So, and then, somebody starts asking you all kinds of questions about it, and you very legitimately cannot recall any of it. So, and 90% of the stuff that's retained now unless you're in a regulated industry where they have good reasons for you to want to maintain certain types of data for legal reasons, you just don't need it. But it's time consuming to get rid of as well. When this was back when Eliot Spitzer was still the Attorney General, and before his interesting life changes, he went after the insurance industry for brokerage agreements, for not disclosing, for insurance brokers not disclosing to their clients they were making money in both sides of a deal. And we had clients that had to go back and get data from like 15, 20 years before, and they had these orphan systems, and it cost them an enormous amount of money. And that's when they kind of get religion and decide that they need to have a more robust retention program in place and get rid of all the old emails and so forth. But getting it right and making sure that you're keeping what you need and what you're required to need is not easy.
No, not at all, and it's huge. So when clients come to you, you offer a bunch of different services. So you also offer kind of organization of this, as well as, if they're having an oh crap moment, someone's hacked us. You offer you offer across the board. Is that correct?
We do, and it tends to be different folks within the organization, but within our practice. My work is typically first responder type work. So let's say a trade secret theft or a cyber breach or a financial fraud. I'll come in, bringing with me, behind my cape, the forensic accountants or the technologists or the research folks, whatever the specific, or an industry specific experts, whatever the incident requires. And then as you get your arms around it and you start to figure out how to get it behind you, to get the problem in your rear view mirror, that may be disclosures, that may be the whole thing may be in a litigation context, so you've now figured out your strategy and so forth. When there's a problem like that, typically it occurs because there are weak internal controls somewhere. It might be a weak accounting control. It might be a weak data security control. It may be something, but there's always something to be learned from a bad situation, and a way to strengthen your organization. So if you have an incident, if you had bad litigation, if you have a DOJ investigation, if you have a cyber breach, the best thing you can possibly do once the dust settles is to take a look at your organization and have a robust discussion with the folks that were involved in it and say, how can we stop this from happening? How can we be better? What things do we need to put in place so that, we harden the target? Oftentimes, like for cyber breach, for example, you don't have to have an impenetrable system. You just have to make it hard enough so that they go somewhere else. You have to obviously have be up to industry benchmarks and guide, and best practices, but you're just making it more difficult to breach your systems than the guy next door means they're just going to go next door. It's just, you think about it as like a burglar checking the back doors, right? If the door's locked, they go next door. And that's true whether it's retention agreements, whether it's compliance programs, whether it's employee education. You need to look and see how can we strengthen the organization and then put a plan in place. Sometimes it takes a couple of years to implement because you may have the need to put in brand new systems, which can be expensive, and you have to vet vendors, and you have to figure out, which budget year you're gonna sink the cost into. But if you have a plan of continuous improvement and you're able to look at your organization in a way that's non-defensive, because that's part of the problem when you've had really ugly litigation or an investigation. You tend to circle the wagons and feel like life's unfair. And if you can get out of that mindset and say, okay, how do we get better? If we had done what? If we had done what things would have prevented this? that's when you really contribute to an organization, I think. It's not just incident response and getting through it, but it's making your organization better, as it should be.
Exactly, because learning to lock your doors is a lot better than trying to find the burglar after the crowd's been done.
That's exactly right, especially if they're sitting in the Ukraine somewhere. You're never going to get them. I mean, that's part of the problem with some of the breaches is, you can raise your fist, but, there's not much you can do in terms of getting recompense.
So, if a company is all of a sudden in the throes of some kind of cybersecurity breach, or their disgruntled employee has left with all of their information, what is the best way to get in contact with you?
Oh, well, we're on the web. It's at thinkbrg.com, and you can also, if you just type in on the internet, Berkeley Research Group, you'll look at our global investigations practice group. It's got a nice, beautiful page with good-looking pictures of lots of really intelligent and experienced people. And then I'm personally located in Chicago, and my email is pdailey, DALEY, at thinkbrg.com, and we are just sitting there waiting to hear about what your problems are and see how we can help.
Peggy, I could talk to you all day about this because there's 1,000 questions, but we're going to have you on again because this has been very insightful, and I'm going to go lock my door, shred my documents, and put up a firewall on my
build your bunker, line it with lead. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. All right. Well, that was Peggy Daley with the Berkeley Research Group. Check them out. They offer so many incredible services. This has been Juliette Lamar with Future Tech Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Coming to Dallas, Texas, September 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2018, the Blockchain and Future Tech Expo. This is going to be a gigantic conference of over 5,000 people. We're going to be talking about blockchain and its applications. We're going to be talking about quantum computing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and several other future technologies that are poised to and actually changing our lives as we speak. Here's why you should attend. As you may know, early adopters are the ones that investigated and profited from things like the gold rush in the 1800s, from the dot-com boom in the 1990s, from the internet boom in 2005, from the smartphone explosion in 2007, from the real estate boom that ended in 2008, and of course, from the Bitcoin boom that started in 2012. Early adopters act now. They don't wait till later. They go out west first. In their covered wagons, they find the biggest gold nuggets. If you consider yourself an early adopter and you want to find the biggest nuggets, then you owe it to yourself to attend this upcoming conference. Blockchain is going to affect how we control and store our medical data, how we send money around the world, how we bank, and more. But artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cybersecurity will play a pivotal role in our lives as well. And that's why our next event, September 14th to the 16th at the Dallas Convention Center, is going to have not only 5,000 plus attendees, but will showcase blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and more. You want to get in on the coming gold rush of future tech and opportunity as an early adopter. Don't be left out. To register, go to bftexpo.com. That's blockchainfuturetechexpo.com. Thank you. You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.